Yee! Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Tiffany and I'm the owner of Tiffany Gordon Cosplay LLC, which is a company that focuses on costume and prop fabrication as well as education. And I'm excited to bring you the first of 3 cosplay tutorials for Marcel from Delicious in Dungeon. And this anime is really good and it makes you really hungry for critters. And on this one, I'm going to be teaching you how to make your own shawl for the costume. But before we begin, remember to like this video as well as subscribe to the channel. I always love having new members join our cosplay building community. So let's begin. And here is everything that you'll need for making the shawl, and I'll have links to everything in the description, as well as you can find my pattern available on my website, link in the description. And the fabric that I got are going to be the 2 on the left of this image, and it is going to be Kana cotton, the color turquoise, as well as yellow cotton sateen. And I got these from Joann's, but you can use whatever fabric that you want. And to first start off, you're going to want to pin all of the yellow labeled pieces of my pattern onto your yellow fabric and cut them out twice. These will be parts L through T. And you'll do the same process for all the blue labeled pieces on your blue fabric, and these are parts A through K. And this is what all of the parts should look like once cut out. And to first start off, let's talk about just making the shawl part of this. And for this, you're going to want to pin the blue and the yellow fabric to their correlating pieces, pin in place, and then we're going to go to our sewing machine. And for sewing, I'm going to be using a universal sewing needle for my sewing machine, and we're going to start off with a straight stitch. Once that's done, we're then going to go and get our iron, and where our seam is connected, we're going to want to iron that down flat with the seam going over the blue side. And I highly recommend pinning it in place afterwards because it'll make it easier to sew. And then we can go back to our sewing machine, and now on the top side that doesn't show our seam, we're going to be stitching down the blue part of the fabric, and this is going to hold that seam down flat and make it very nice and pretty, again with a straight stitch. And then next, you're going to start pinning the pieces together to their correlating partners, followed by sewing it again with a straight stitch. And at this point, you should have 2 full sections of sewed pieces of your shawl. And I went back to my iron and ironed all of the seams flat, and then again back to my sewing machine to sew them flat as well. Now we're going to connect those 2 halves together, and for this you're going to want to pin them with their top sides facing toward each other, so you should be seeing nothing but seams on either sides. And I started by pinning the yellow sections together, starting at the corner and working my way towards the center and towards the ends, and then back to our sewing machine to sew it with a straight stitch. Reminder, do not sew the top section of the blue closed, as we will need to, after this part is done, go back and flip it inside out. And at this point, your piece is gonna be kind of like a parachute and really fluffy and poofy. So I like to go back to my iron, and I will actually iron all of the edges nice and flat, and I'll pin them so that way it's just easier to manage going back to my sewing machine to finish off with another straight stitch. And once that's done, then we can finally close the top half of the shawl, starting with a straight stitch. And then we're going to move to an overcasting stitch to lock this in place to finish off the shawl part. Now let's discuss the hood part. And you should have 4 pieces of the blue fabric already cut out for this hood, and you're going to want to pin them together around the back curvature section to have 2 pairs. Then to the sewing machine for another straight stitch. And I didn't film it, but before I went to sew again, I did iron that seam flat and went back to my sewing machine and sewed it with a straight stitch to have that seam nice and flat. And at this point, you should have 2 sewn pieces, and we're gonna connect them together so that way our seams are towards the outside, and you're gonna pin around the outer edge Again, you're going to want to leave the bottom section open. And back to the sewing machine for a straight stitch. And then after that's done, you're gonna want to flip the piece inside out. And then I went back to my iron and ironed that seam flat, followed by pinning in place. Then to the sewing machine, and we're gonna sew that edge with a straight stitch again. And then after that, we can sew the bottom closed, starting with a straight stitch. And then we're gonna finish it off with an overcasting stitch. Now to attach the hood to the shawl. And for this, you're going to want to find the center of both the shawl and the hood. And I always do a pin to mark it so I have a good indication of where I'm gonna align those two pieces together, starting in the center and then working my way around towards the outer edges with the pins. Then to the sewing machine, and we're gonna start with a straight stitch, and you guessed it, our overcasting stitch afterwards to lock all of that in place. And I'm not a big fan of a sewn seam just being loose, especially around the neck because it scratches. So I went back with a straight stitch on the top part of our fabric that's going to be facing up, and I sewed it flat with a straight stitch, and that will complete this. And the last part to talk about the shawl is the red ribbon. And for me, I already had some double-sided red bias tape at home, so I got that and I sewed it closed using a stretch stitch. And I did this on the edge that was open, as well as I did it as a decorative stitch on the opposite side so it looked uniform. I then folded it in half and then sewed it at a slight angle so it would make a triangle-like shape using a straight stitch. I then sewed two pieces together in a T-like shape, which I put the V on top of and then folded the T shape around to make the knot in the center, and that was how I created the red ribbon. And for me, I just permanently attached it on either side, so the shawl just goes over my head like a hoodie. But if you would like it to come on and off easier, you can always hand sew a snap onto it or a hook and eye to get in and out easier. But that is how I completed the shawl. And that, guys, is how I made Marcel's shawl from Delicious in Dungeon. And I hope you found this video helpful for making your very own shawl for Marcel, or maybe just for another character. Who knows? But let me know in the comments what you thought of the video, as well as don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. A big thank you to all of my company sponsors here on YouTube, as well as all of those members, specifically those legendary members. And I'll see you for our next cosplay tutorial, which will also be for Marcel, and it will be for the dress. So stay tuned. Bye.